I fought professionally. In 9 years of being a police officer, I have never had a use of force complaint.
Mm.
Not once. Not once. And I've gone hands on plenty of times. But because I knew what to do, I'm not throwing, big punches, into someone's face or beating them with the baton because, I had hands on proficiency.
Yo, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the It's Needed podcast, where we discuss real issues involving law enforcement and the community. It's your boy Ryan Tillman, founder of Breaking Barriers United, and I'm joined by two light-skinned wonders today. The first one, as we always know, Mr. Oh No Wistopopo. What's going on, Brody?
Bam, 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 bam. Hey, you got to introduce my mustache too. I just came up with a name for it.
The Freedom Stash?
Thanos.
Thanos. You need to snap that thing away.
Oh yeah, bro. Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna love this episode because we got somebody else who's gonna clap back.
Touche.
Oh man. And so the other guest we're joined today by is his Instagram handle goes by Leo Combat Fitness, aka Mr. Nick Santos. What's up, my brother?
How you doing, bro? How you doing?
Shout out to you, bro. Shout out to you. You've been one of our day one listeners, man. So I think this is the first time we actually got one of our listeners as a guest on the podcast. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty dope.
Hey, I'm honored, man. I'm honored. You guys are doing great stuff, man. I've loved it since day one.
Oh, appreciate
I just want
that.
you to realize, and you will by the end of this podcast, who actually has the bad internet connection. So just keep your eyes and ears open. You catch on, Nick. All right,
bro. And then we're also joined today, as always, by my boy, Mr. Savage himself, Mr. Billy, a.k.a. Savage. What's up, bro?
How's it going, everybody?
Billy. Oh, man, I love when something doesn't work because Billy just gets so upset.
Mad Billy is entertaining but scary at the same time. Like,
bro.
people ain't seen Billy's rage before. Like it's intimidating for real.
It's so funny,
Look,
bro.
everything in my life works, so I just need the camera equipment to work, you know?
Bro, I walk into the studio this
Everything
morning.
else is fine.
I walk into the studio this morning, I could just see something wasn't working, bro, because I can see it on Billy's face. He's like, yes, all this equipment in here, it doesn't work, whatever.
It's trash. Throw it all away.
I don't even want to get it top, man.
I don't know if I was that dramatic, but
Oh man, we got all this nice equipment in here and nothing works. So hey man, it's a pleasure being on with you guys, man. It's always miss being on with you guys. It's like I tell you guys, it's therapy. Feels like actually, we really haven't recorded in a couple of weeks because I think the last episode we had pre-recorded. So yeah, we haven't really had a discussion in about 2 weeks. So man, what's going on?
Teller.
Huh?
Little secret teller.
Oh, you talking about the behind the scenes? Hey, no, we got to let folks know. I'm transparent. Sometimes we'll pre-record and we'll drop episodes, have them on deck. But this one, when you guys are listening to this episode, we will have just recorded it this morning. So this one is actually, it's almost like being live, man. But what's new in your guys' life, man? What's going on with you, eh?
I can't call it, man. Just
can't call it, man.
Can't call it. Getting the whole fatherhood thing down. Little man sleeping, he laughing, giggling. So that's good and exciting. My brother's in town with his family, so my mom got to spend a Mother's Day with both of her sons for the first time in like 5 or 6 years. So she was big happy. She's smiling from ear to ear. Fired the grill up. If y'all want, once we done recording, I'll teach y'all some things on the grill.
Oh Lord! Hey, is your house still put together, bro, or did it blow? Did it burn down?
Hey, so just because we're on a podcast and we're transparent, I'll admit this to y'all. I bought my first grill 2 days ago. I didn't put the propane tank in it or nothing. I had to wait until my big bro came over and I was like, hey, show me how to use this, man. I was like, don't tell nobody. Show me how to use it. He literally had to walk me through like step by step, but I'm pretty much a pro now. So, when y'all
bro, why I can see I just got this visual of AJ like trying to like reach, bro, like to like flip the burgers or whatever, because that flame is creeping out.
I don't mess with fire, man. Fire and electricity. Two things I don't mess with, man.
Hey, since we are transparent though, I can't lie, man. My wife been on me. So we bought a house 5 years ago, right? So we were living in a house for 5 years, 5.5 years. We just sold that house. And when we moved into that place, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna buy a grill for the backyard. Did we ever see a grill? Negative. So then we sold our house, moved into another house recently, and she was like, you still ain't got a grill. You've been talking about this grill for 6 years.
But do you know how to grill?
I do. Hey, I could grill a little bit. I could grill a little bit.
A little bit like
I could
like,
throw down, bro. I could throw down.
All right.
I could throw down a little something, son.
Hey, because look, when I say my brother had to walk me through step by step, he had to show me every feature of my grill. Like it's like, hey, this button does this. This is when you flip the patties. I was like, okay.
Oh man. Hey, so
You sitting there taking notes.
Oh yeah, mental notes. I'm good to go.
my man had Google out. Hey, so for one of our podcast listeners, I'm gonna need you guys to do me a favor. I'm gonna need y'all to create a shirt that says "I can't call it." I want to get a shirt that says "I can't call it."
I can't call it. And then little dash AJ.
Yeah.
Copywritten, so don't copy me. That's
Oh man, I love it, man. Nick, what's going on with you, man, on your end?
Oh man. Well, I'm over here in Illinois, so we're still shut down with the whole COVID-19 thing. But I'm blessed and still going to work. A lot of people are out of work right now. My wife is blessed to still at work. She's a nurse practitioner in an ER, so she's
Wow.
right there on the front lines with it even more. So we're both blessed in that aspect, but things are shut down around here. People are starting getting a little stir crazy. So I hope it opens up, sometime soon.
So just to set the record straight, you are not in Chicago.
I'm not in Chicago.
because Ryan, before the podcast started, asked Nick, he's like, oh, where you live? He was like, oh, I'm in Illinois. And Ryan was like, oh, Chicago. Like the whole state of Illinois is just Chicago.
Hey.
He's like, I'm like 3 hours away, man.
So if you guys haven't noticed yet, my geography ain't the most pristine, but I can do enough to get by though. If y'all want to know where I struggle, if y'all want to know where I struggled out in my field training program, bro, it's geography. Oh man, so
Nick, what just happened?
Man, AJ, your internet is flawless.
My internet is flawless, baby.
Okay.
Let's go.
Hey Billy, now we know that ain't the truth. We got a
Let's
multi-million-dollar studio over here. I know that our
And nothing
internet-
works, but the internet works.
But that internet work. We can't get a screen to work, but we know that internet works, man.
Hey,
So,
Billy back there punching air right now.
oh, bro, what's up with you, Billy?
Oh, I mean, nothing. California is kind of opening up. Traffic's coming back out. Had a pool day yesterday, so life is good.
Stimulus checks at the bank yet?
Wednesday, I get mine.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Wednesday. There it is.
I'll be in Vegas
you get your check
Thursday.
right
Whoever wants to meet me there, I'll be tripling my stimulus check.
Ooh.
How do you know you get your check Wednesday?
Because if you go on the government.com, because I did mine last week, it will actually no, bro. That I can still see you guys clearly, bro. That's your guys' internet. I went on the government.com website, irs.gov, and it will actually now they updated the site. It will actually give you an update.
This man just said government.com.
Government.com.
Yeah, irs.gov, whatever. Hey,
right.
what, y'all know what
So
I'm
go
talking
to the
about.
website and it'll tell you when you're getting it.
Yeah, it will actually give you a date. It will tell you like exactly what date you're gonna get it. So I did that last week. Found out mine was about to hit the account last Wednesday, and it did. Sure enough.
Man, I got mine the first day they went out.
That's because Nick was in line first.
Chicago.
Man, I was surprised, man. Chicago, yeah. I was surprised looking at my bank account going, oh, wait a minute, someone made a mistake.
So is it like 1,200 on the dot? Like you get 1,200 flat out?
So depending on what you have. So like,
Well,
You got kids, though, a little bit more.
5 kids, man. You can get like 10 grand, man.
I
That's
just
true.
saying, bro, pays to have kids, bro. I had 3 of them. I'll let y'all do the math.
Okay, yeah, I gotta check mine out because I'm mad now.
Yeah,
I appreciate that info, Billy.
Kid.
Oh yeah, Billy stepped out. Billy has to handle something, man. So, but yeah, things are good. Like Billy said, things are starting to open up, and people are getting stir crazy out there, and it's kind of wild, man. So I remember we start doing this, COVID-19 watch a few weeks ago when all this stuff started happening. We did an episode talking about why people need to stay indoors, and then it seems like things are leveling out, but people are still getting sick. I've actually had my cousin got sick. Hopefully she don't listen to the podcast because she's gonna kill me because she don't want all our business out there. But she got it, and her husband got it.
Sorry to hear
and,
that.
Yeah, they're
They doing all right?
Yeah, they're doing better though now.
Good.
I had, some other. So there's a lot of people close to me that have gotten it, but they're doing better. And so we just got to navigate through the process, man. We can't get bogged down. But at some point in time, we do have to go back to living a normal life. And I think initially when this all happened, it's like anything else, man. When something happens that you're not used to or that's not normal, everybody kind of panics. And then, you know, you get that new normal. When that new normal comes, and everybody starts getting back to how or wanting to live the way they lived before. And so I think that's kind of where we're at now, man. People just want to go back to living their normal life. You know what I mean? I think things will be a little bit different. I actually kind of like the social distancing aspect. Actually, like, you know, don't come into my personal space, man. I just kind of, you know, so I like that. Let's keep that.
It is nice. That is nice.
I'm interested to see if we ever go back to like 100% normal. I don't think we will. You know, like when the church is open, like I'm curious, like, will the pews be normal? Will they be roped off in sections? Like what are the restaurants going to look like? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns right now.
It was
Very
interesting.
much so.
I watched the UFC fight, and I was like the first one with no fans, bro. It was kind of funny, actually.
Hear them punches. Pow,
bro,
pow.
yeah. And then when they walked out, man, you know, they announced the names, and they like pointing, and they like almost forgetting, like, oh, shoot, I ain't got nobody up there to point at.
Yeah.
Right. That would be hard as
camera.
Yeah, right.
That'd be hard as a performer because, you know, like part of, like, I'll speak for me at least. Like when I did that Guns versus Hoses boxing match, like, when I came out, like I was like pumped, I was amped, but then I looked out and I seen the crowd and I was like, oh yeah, it's game time. Like it took it to a whole nother level. So that would be hard, like as a fighter or really whatever.
Well, they're talking about bringing the NBA back, and with NBA, they talking about making it like a pickup game almost. It was going to sound like a pickup game.
All you gonna hear is sneakers.
Two. Drop low.
Oh, yeah.
Bring it up.
Where you at, baby? Where you at?
Ball up.
Speaking of, have y'all watched the Jordan documentary?
Bro, I'm like, well, yes, but we're not as far. We're like,
just
I'm like
finished
2 episodes
episode
in.
5.
I'm only episode 2.
I think I'm on 4. I think I just finished 4 a couple of days. Hey, listen, I'm gonna just put it out there. LeBron James is a great player, but he's not messing with Jordan. He's not. It's impossible, man. Well, it was a different game back then.
Well, the mere fact that you would compare LeBron or bypass Kobe and just go to Jordan kind of makes me feel disrespected. Because
I could dig it.
Yeah,
but that's the argument.
Because
that is the argument.
You can't compare LeBron to Jordan. It's got to be a Kobe Jordan argument. LeBron,
I agree.
LeBron is up there, top 5 for sure. But if you talk about the greats, it's got to be, and it's not even just because, and I don't want to get too sidetracked, but it's not even just because what they did on the court. It's just that mentality that they had. Like, they had that. And there's a book I'm reading called Relentless by Tim Grover, Tim Grover is the personal trainer he was a personal trainer for Jordan, Kobe, and Dwayne Wade. And they all had that same mentality. That Mamba mentality, Jordan had it. All of them, those 3 had it. And so I think when you talk about being the great, there's more that goes into being the great than just what your numbers reflect. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. There was part of that documentary where Jordan had, Jordan hurt himself and he could only play like a certain amount of time. I don't want to give away too much. He could only play a certain amount of time per game. So when that time came around where he was supposed to be healed, the doctor came to him and said, hey, there's a 90% chance that you'll be okay, but there's a 10% chance that you'll re-hurt yourself.
I saw that one, yep.
And if you re-hurt yourself, you'll never play basketball again. So the head coach was talking to MJ, and he's like, look, MJ, I don't think you understand like the risk versus reward factor here. And MJ's like, no, I do. And the coach is like, listen, if you had a really bad headache and I gave you a bottle of 10 pills, and 9 of them cured the headache immediately, but 1 killed you, would you take it? And this is what separates Jordan from everybody else in my book. Jordan immediately replied, well, it depends on how bad that headache is. I was like, that's my man. That's my man right there.
Absolutely.
Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just a mentality too. Because you think about the guy. Go ahead. The guys that played in that era were different than who LeBron's playing. Like everybody right now is friends off the court. When Jordan, and that's why I say Kobe was like the last of his era, because those guys had enemies, like real enemies on and off the court. You know what I mean? LeBron, everybody, they go out there and, be enemies on the court, and then they go kick it after the game. You know what I mean? So that also played into it too.
Michael Jordan still can't stand Isaiah Thomas. He still can't stand him.
Right. It talks about it. What dream team? Thomas?
Yeah. Yeah. Bro.
I ain't do it.
So man, yeah, if you guys haven't, for all of our listeners out there, if you guys haven't taken a watch at that, it's gonna be the Last Dance. It's on ESPN. So if you guys have ESPN Plus or something like that, or get the app, man, it is great. It's definitely inspirational, and I think the reason I think it's important to watch is just because for me, everything I do in life, I'm always looking at how does it apply to my life, like. What can I do to apply these situations to my life? Because obviously I'm not a hooper. I'm not on the basketball team, not playing on the greatest team on earth. But on one sense, in another sense, I play, I don't play, but I'm a police officer and I want to make sure that I'm operating on one of the greatest departments on earth. You know what I mean? So how can I make my department better? Because if my department's better, then ultimately we're going to have better policing and all the other things. So, there's so many different ways that you can apply a lot of these concepts in your life, man. So I don't want to get too sidetracked, Nick. I don't want to steal your thunder, man. So Nick, man, tell us about yourself. Tell us where you come from. Tell us what you do. And, tell the world about Leo Combat Fitness.
Oh, man. So I grew up, I remember you saying in earlier episodes, you grew up not liking the police. I grew up the same way. I grew up in the hood, and it was just a thing. You grew up with kids where like, hey, police come and run. We actually, as a game, cops would come. Even if they weren't coming, someone would yell, cops, and everyone would run. That was just our mentality. I originally grew up not liking the police. My dad was a firefighter, and that's what I was going to be as I grew up. And things happened along the way. I had a brother who was addicted to drugs. Ended up losing his life because of it. I had a nephew who lost his life to gun violence. And this all happened within like a month time span when I was in high school.
Wow.
And then from there, I was like, changed. I was like, what am I going to do about this? So from there, I was like, man, I think I'm going to be a police officer. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I went to college for it, middle of college. And I was like, man, I'm feeling bad. My parents paying for me to do this and I ain't getting the best grades. So I ended up joining the Army and then coming back and finishing college. And from there, just got hired on. And at this time, I was fighting mixed martial arts for a few years. And in the academy, I was like, man, some of the stuff they're doing, I'm like, oh, that doesn't work in the real world. I don't understand that's safe, but I don't think that's going to work, man. And the years went by. I started fighting professionally. I trained with some great people. I got buddies in the UFC, the Professional Fighters League, Bellator, still right now. And I decided to do something with that to help police officers, on the streets, better control the human body, because a lot of times we see these deadly force encounters. And I watch these videos and I'm like, I understand, hey, they did what they had to do 100%. But at the same time, I feel guilty because like, man, I know if I was in that situation, I saw what could have been done to prevent that. And, it's if you have to get to that point where you go to deadly force, you have to. But at the same time, it's like you have to live with that the rest of your life, too. Mm-hmm. And that's not easy, So I started this as a way of, throwing out training ideas and techniques that I know and that I teach. I'm a Gracie survival tactics instructor. I'm a Spear defensive tactics instructor. And I teach anyone that wants to learn, either guys here locally. I don't charge them or anything. They come over to my house. I just teach them, just like, hey, if you want to learn that, I'll teach you because it's about all of us going home at the end of the day, not just on one side or the other. It just helps us all. So, mm-hmm. I mean, that's my passion. I mean, that's the way I want to change the face of law enforcement by increasing hands-on proficiency, because that increases that officer confidence, then you don't have to put that line in your report, I was in fear for my life, because after that, we know what follows.
Mm-hmm. So how long have you been on the force now?
I've been a police officer for 9 years. So I've done the FTO thing. I'm on our SWAT team. I'm in our gang unit right now, and just doing everything, man. Just whatever I can get my hands on.
I see. So when you made the transition from, because I'm super intrigued in your story because there's similarities with mine. When you made the transition from not liking the police to deciding you wanted to become a police officer, can you touch on that? Like what hurdles and obstacles did you face and have to jump or move around? Because I know personally I had to go through you know, hell and high water. So I can't imagine, you know, what you had to go through in Chicago, quote unquote Chicago.
Ooh. Well, you know, I got in some trouble in my younger years, and the hard part was finding someone to give me a chance.
Yeah.
And I started with a smaller department with a guy who he knew me throughout the years, and he saw me, and he saw, you know, how I had grown over time. And he said, "I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna give you a chance, but if you mess up this chance, that's gonna be it for you. I'll tell you that right now." So I use that as my foot in the door to, you know, just get my name out there with the bigger department in the area and just learn everything I could. And there were hurdles besides that, you know, with family, friends. My best friend as a child, you know, he ended up in prison, and I ended up being a police officer. Just crazy how just it's split like that.
Yep.
And he's out, and I see him to this day. You know, we still hug each other and everything. You know, he's on a better path now. But
Good.
I remember him telling me once, before I even became police officer, I was just in school for it. He told me, he said, "Hey man, if you need to get out of this town, do it. There ain't nothing for us right here. Like, just do what you have to do so you don't end up like me." You know, there's still love there and everything. But definitely hurdles.
So Nick, I was going to ask you, I got a lot of questions that I want to ask actually, but
I love it.
what was one of the initial perceptions that changed for you when you became a law enforcement officer? Because, you know, like all of us, none of us grew up wanting to be a police officer, and then we obviously became officers. So what was one of the things that kind of just was like light bulb, like, this is different than what I thought, you know what I mean, once you became an officer?
Your perspective, man, it changes. You're like, oh, this is why this happens. Oh, you know, you're now in that world. You can see through the eyes of the other side, as opposed to, you know, seeing it as just a civilian on one side and thinking, oh man, police are bad. They did that. That's way too much. And when you're there, you're like, whoa, this is totally different. This is not what I thought. And you try to convey that to, you know, say family or friends and everything. And depending on their relationship with you or how rooted they are on their own beliefs or prejudices, you know, sometimes you get through, sometimes you don't. But it's a hard thing. I mean, that's one reason why I love you guys, you know, with, you know, this breaking barriers, man, because it's hard to you know, convey that message of, hey, this is why this happens. You know, it's not because of this, it's because of this reason. But I had that, and then an older officer who took an interest in me is right when I was starting, and oh man, he's retired now, but that guy, you know, he just led me through the fire and just, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what you need to expect. But, you know, just never let them take your smile, man, whether it be your own department or, you know, community, never let them take your smile.
No, that's good. That's good. So go ahead, Ryan.
Now, I was going to ask briefly, I want to ask a question to both of you guys. Have you guys ever lost any friends or family because you're an officer? I don't even know if I've ever asked you this, AJ.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've had really, really close family members call me, and, you know, when I've had videos that have went viral or surfaced or, you know, whatever, you know, made statements like, you know, you were supposed to be one of the good cops, and, you know, we exchanged words and I ain't talked to him since. You know, I touched on the process when I decided that I wanted to pursue a career in law enforcement. Like, how many friends, I mean, I had quote unquote friends threaten to shoot my house up. No, I'm gonna shoot your house up. Like, we don't have snitches from here and blah, blah, blah. So, definitely. But, you know, Ryan, I know we've talked about this before. I've always been like a firm believer in keeping like your circle small and tight, and everybody inside of that circle you should be able to go with like the craziest idea and receive nothing but support, right? Like, I could go to somebody in my circle. Ryan is in that circle. I could call Ryan in the middle of the night. He gonna pick up groggy, and I'm like, Ryan, I'm gonna learn Chinese. And his initial reaction might laugh, be like, man, like, what is going on? But then it's immediately gonna be followed by, what can I do to help? What can I do to help you along in pursuing your dreams and achieving what you want to achieve? So the cool thing about, like, when these quote unquote friends started writing me off is I had 2 to 3 people inside that circle that I still rock with to this day, because despite them not liking the police and despite them having like run-ins and thinking whatever about law enforcement, they seen me for who I am, had that relationship, and were like, look, I think you're crazy, but I'm gonna rock with you. I'm gonna support you. And now I still talk to them this day. They still come over my house. I still go over their house. Their family's my family, and vice versa. So that has definitely strengthened our relationship as well.
That's crazy. What about you, Nick?
Family, not so much. Family was actually pretty supportive, honestly, because they knew why I got into it. The police didn't force my brother to use drugs. The police didn't shoot my nephew. There was things going on in our community, and they knew I wanted to do something to help stop that. So family was good. Friends, that initially was a struggle, and I didn't know how I was going to do that. Friends and acquaintances, especially because I work my neighborhood growing up. I work where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
So I know a lot of the people, and they know me, and they know my family. And I thought, man, what if, they try to do something against my family? Thankfully, nothing like that's happened. But friends and acquaintances, you definitely lose. But at the same time, you find out, you realize that were they really your friends in the first place?
Yep. Yep.
The ones that were your friends, you do that. Hey, man, I know you. I respect you. I understand why you're doing it, what you're doing it. I'll rock with you.
Yep.
Wow, what's crazy? So the one thing I want to touch on is you mentioned something in my first question about the word perspective and how your perspective changed. And the reason I asked both of you guys that question is because we'll lose friends or family based off of one word, which is perspective. And a lot of times people will have a false perspective of something, and because of that false perspective, they will become or react out of emotions towards you or the profession that you do, and therefore the relationship becomes strained. And it's sad, you know what I mean? Because think about it, we work the one profession that if you go out and do this job, then you automatically might have hostility from other people just because of their perspective. Think about it. If I said I'm gonna go get a job at Chick-fil-A today, nobody's gonna be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're gonna go work at Chick-fil-A. You know what I mean?
You the plug.
How come you're not working at Popeyes? You know what I mean? You should be working at Popeyes.
That was my first job.
You know what I mean? So
You're the plug.
same thing. If you go get a job as a doctor, it's one of those things, oh man, that's cool. Like, thank you. You know what I mean? Like, legit. Teacher, same thing. Lawyer, whatever it may be. But you get a job as a police officer, and automatically that person that you tell that is going to have a perspective, whether it be good or bad, we don't know yet until they actually show their true colors, but they're automatically going to have a perspective about it. And so what's crazy about that whole situation is that for me, I find myself actually developing strong relationships with the people that I actually, communicate with on my day job, because I'm physically able to change their perspective of law enforcement because they see a man in uniform doing a job that they least would expect it's receiving the treatment that they're getting from me. Whereas my friends and family, they may not actually see me actually do the job. They see me on BBU, they see me do presentations or whatever, but they're still just seeing Ryan, for the most part, because I'm not in uniform. Right. It's the ones that I actually deal with in uniform that they're actually like, man, like my perspective is now changed. And so, I go back to last night. I was actually working patrol last night, and I came across these 4 or 5 juveniles that were out just skateboarding, and we got out of my car and I'm training somebody, and we're just having a good old time where I'm like, hey, what's going on? Didn't treat them all foul or nothing like that. And one of them actually was on FaceTime. I was like, who you on FaceTime? He was like, my brother. I was like, oh man, tell your brother I said what up. So his brother, we're doing like a little selfie or whatever. And he's like, who you on with? I'm like, oh man, this is the Popo or whatever, just like laughing or whatever. But the kids were like, when we left, they were like, oh man, like that was pretty cool. So their perspective changed. And so what I'm trying to get at is that it's unfortunate that we will lose people based off of a perspective, and that's not based on fact. You know what I mean? It's based off of emotions. And so, I think that's what's so valuable about the work that we're trying to do, is that we're trying to change perspective, but it's not always as easy as it seems. And Billy, do you have anything as far as like perspective that you can bring to the table from a civilian standpoint? Like, let me ask you this. Did you know any officers before me?
Personally, in where I grew up, I did. I knew one.
Okay,
yeah.
So with that being said, did you know enough to be able to form an opinion about law enforcement? I'm assuming you had a positive opinion towards law enforcement because you didn't really have any negative interactions. But you see people, or do you know family members or friends that had a bad perspective of law enforcement?
No, to be honest, I grew up in a small town, so I had positive interactions. So did my family. So I don't have a lot I could say onto that.
It's because he's white. Go ahead.
Well, when you said that, it was funny because I have. So man,
I'm just playing to all of our listeners out there too, y'all.
Yeah,
Don't be
he's joking. I mean, I am white. But he's joking.
no, it's funny because I have the black side of my family. They're from like a really small town here in Ohio, like the most northeastern part of Ohio you can get. I mean, it's super small. But if you ask them like what their experience is with law enforcement, it's polar opposite. So I had to laugh when you said that because I was thinking
is that the black side or the white side of the family?
The black side is the black side.
Oh,
and
got you. Okay.
So much so that like the town is so small. My grandmother was alive. She was like big mama of the town. Like she watched everyone's kids. Everyone knew who she was. Like everybody, like literally everybody, the police officers and whatnot. And I was up there visiting her. I don't know. I was probably like 13, 14. And she lived in like a small apartment, like a small 2-bedroom apartment. And at this time, during the summer, all her grandbabies would be up there visiting her. So the apartment would be stacked and you would have to sleep like head to toe in the bed. You fit like 5 kids on the bed and then you feel the floor around the bed. I mean, it was like that type of deal. But anyway, it was hot in the apartment. Me and my cousin, who I was really good friends with, were out in the parking lot talking. And out of nowhere, she goes, just act cool. And I'm like, act cool? Like, what are you talking about? It's late. I mean, it's probably like 10 o'clock, 11. And out of nowhere, a cop comes out of the wood line, like Rambo, like, and I'm laughing. I'm like, what is going on here? And then 2 cop cars come behind us and they all jump out like all aggressively, like expecting me to run, I guess, or I don't know. But I'm laughing because I've always had this mentality of like, what are you chill? What are you doing? And the guy finally comes out of the wood. He's got like thorns and trees and leaves all over him. And he's like, what are you 2 up to? And we're like, we just sitting in the parking lot, leaning against my grandmother's car. Like she lived right here. And they were like, where are you from? You have ID. I was 16 because I had ID on me. So they look at my ID and they're like, oh, you're from Columbus. You're one of those big city tough guys. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, and I couldn't stop laughing. Long story short, my grandmother comes out and puts them in check, gets us in the house. But that's like their experience in a small town. So
on that though, let me ask both of you guys, do you guys think that race plays a part in the perspective of the way people view police?
Yeah.
I don't think that's disputable.
I know, and it's kind of like a rhetorical question, but we never talk about it, right? And I say that because I've kind of noticed that, like, dealing with, black people, for example, my family, whatever it may be, they may be a little bit more hostile towards the police. And it's not necessarily based on maybe a personal interaction. Now, don't get me wrong. I do have family members that have had some bad interactions with law enforcement. I talk about it. But you may have some people that maybe not have had a bad interaction with law enforcement, but the way you're culturally raised, you're almost raised in a sense of, I don't really like police. On the flip side of that, let's say you are white. And AJ, you just touched on that. Would you say the white side of your family is...
No, black.
Huh?
That was the black side of my family.
I know, but I'm saying, would you say the white side of your family had that same posture towards police?
No. And ironically enough, they're from next door, like the town next door, which is equally small, very comparable. And I don't know them extremely well, but I know there wasn't like an open hostility, like vocalized. Is that a word? Vocalized? Did I just make that up?
I think so.
You can say it's a word.
It's a word now.
It's a word. But they didn't freely speak about their hostility towards the police. I do know that.
Then
I have the same. Go ahead, Billy.
Well, I was going to say a follow-up question then. How much of that is raised in a culture to not like police, and how much of it is actual experience, and that's why they don't like police?
So good question. I'm gonna hop on this because this is my jam. I have really good friends who absolutely love the police, of both races. And we'll just say black and white. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to exclude anybody, but we'll stick to this for now. And then I have really good friends who absolutely hate the police of both races. And I had an interesting conversation with a really good friend of mine. He's a male black. I mean, this guy is probably the smartest person you could ever meet in your life. He's super accredited. I won't say his name because he probably don't want that information out there. But I mean, you could Google this dude. He's got book. He's crazy, right? And he brought up a good point, and I've heard it before, but I never really thought about it in depth. And it's this. I'll just ask. I'll ask you, Ryan. What started the police? Like what started police officers?
Slave patrols.
So it's slave patrol, but I've actually done some research on this.
Okay.
And
I like where this is
so
going.
the research I found on it is that it wasn't necessarily slave patrol. It was more so patrols for businesses, like making sure that the wealthy people's businesses were protected and maintained. So there's truth and non-truth to this slave patrol thing. Because I've had a research because I've got hit up all the time about
we should do a video like on that. That's interesting. I've never heard that
of of how policing started.
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting. But go ahead. So yes, to answer your question, in part slave patrol, but there's also a lot of falsehoods. Is that a word?
We just making up words today, man. We're rolling with it.
There's not some truths to that as well. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm getting to your answer, Billy. So with that said, and he sent me a couple links. We'll have to like do like maybe a bigger segment on that itself. But with that said, you have to take into consideration my grandmother has stories where she was like openly harassed by the police for being an African American, right? For being black. So you really can't blame her for telling her children. She had 10 kids. You really can't blame her for telling her children, hey, the stove is hot. And that's an analogy, right? Like we all know as adults, if I touch the top of the stove, it's going to be hot. So I tell my children, because I care about them, hey, don't touch the top of the stove. You'll burn your hand. So as my grandmother growing up in the time that she did and experiencing what she experienced, she's telling us, hey, be careful out there. There are police officers who will take you to jail, beat you, do whatever. And she's not doing that from a hateful stance, because my grandma was like the biggest church woman, big hats on Sundays, right? Didn't have a hateful bone in her body. She was doing that from a loving standpoint. Like, hey, I care about my children. I don't want you to go through what I've went through. So the stove is hot. Don't touch the stove. And then maybe we'll say half, right? So maybe half of her children experienced one or two run-ins with the police where they're like, ooh, my grandmother told me about this. I knew that she wasn't lying. And then the other half, maybe they didn't experience anything, but it's in the back of their head. So we'll take the 5 that never experienced anything, right? If they turn on the TV, what do they see? Police officers beating people of color, minorities. If they turn on the radio, what do they hear? F the police did this. If they turn on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, right? It's always something negative. So that is just watering the seed that my grandmother planted, right? So then in their head, when they have a kid, which would be me, they pass that down, right? So now we're talking about our generation, which is how it got to it. So when people ask me questions like that, like I can't wait to jump on it because I've seen both sides. I have seen people who have never experienced anything negative with the police have such a deep-seated hate for law enforcement. But I always caution people to take a step back and kind of look at it like, well, maybe that person's parents or that person's grandparents experienced something and said, hey, just so you know, don't really touch the top of the stove because it's hot, So when you go out and when you're driving and you see a police officer, make sure you set up straight and you take your hat off, because that was something I was taught at an early age. When you see the police, you take your hat off because you don't want to be identified as a certain culture. You set up straight because you don't want to be identified. You turn your music down, you roll your windows down. Like those were just things to help you from not having to interact with police officers. So, that's my jam, and I'm glad you asked.
So
that,
I want to ask you, Nick, the same question, what your feelings are on it, but before I go there, so my grandfather just turned 96 last week. So I think he was born in 1924. Dude still was around when they still had plantations and things like that. One of the things I've often said was, if we go back to politics, when President Obama was running for president the first time, my grandfather would vote for President Obama not based off of necessarily his political stance, but more so because in his lifetime, he never would have ever thought he'd see a point in time where a minority can take the seat as the most highest position in the world, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
However, you have people of our generation who should be voting for somebody not based on the color of their skin, but based off of what their stance is on certain issues, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's kind of similar when we talk about this topic, because it's one of those things where you have generationally people that were around during civil rights days, because we're really not that far removed from civil rights if we think about it.
Right.
So we still have our family, our parents, whatever, that were still around during civil rights. But then on the same token, we also have our generation that has resources. We have the ability to go out there and do our research and do as much as we can to form our own opinion about things. And so where do we draw the line and start saying, okay, you know, instead of feeling this way because my granddad or my grandmother told me to or my mom told me to, let me get my own personal experience with law enforcement before I form my opinion. Like, and that's what's so sad where we are as a society right now. It seems like we still have people that can't make decisions for themselves. They're allowing other people to make the decisions for them. For example, I heard the other day that somebody was telling me that somebody's blowing my phone up, and it is like, sorry about that. So somebody was telling me that their what do you call it? Their source of information comes from Sean King.
Oh God.
And I'm like, no knock on Sean King or whatever, because I don't know him like that. But my point is that, okay, if Sean King is your only source of information, I'm telling you right now that whatever your information or however you feel is probably tainted, because you're not seeing things from both perspectives. And so I want to go to you, Nick, and talk. I want to hear what your opinion is on this topic. And this is actually not the topic I was trying to discuss today, but it just so happened to get here. And it's very good. And it comes on the heels of this whole situation that happened in Georgia. You know what I mean?
Yep.
With you know what I mean? And so because that is, I mean, you saw the initial video, which looks terrible. And I actually said, hey, you know, justice for such and such. What there still needs to be some sort of justice, and we'll get on that in a minute. But at the same time, that man's actions that of the deceased he was doing some stuff that he shouldn't. But it immediately went to race. And so let me go to you, Nick, and then we'll come back to that.
Yeah. Your grandfather's so old. That's awesome. My dad,
he's
turned 82 this year.
World
So,
II
veteran. What's that?
My grandfather's a World War II veteran.
It's a World War II veteran.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah,
hey,
he was
that's
awesome. He was a colonel in the Army.
My dad, he turned 82 this year. He born colonel in the Army, or
yeah, he was a colonel in the Army. Sorry, it's a little delayed. Y'all internet is all bootleg, but it's all
no,
good.
it's good. Hey, Army, that's where it's at. So he grew up with totally different experiences, you know, that we go through today. He was right there in his 20s and 30s during, you know, civil rights when it was starting up and everything. He joined the fire department here in 1968, where there was actually a colored house where all the black firefighters were at. So, you know, he grew up with that, you know. So there's definitely cultural things that get passed down. But sometimes I wonder, of all the things that your parents tell you or grandparents tell you, it's funny that people seem to hold on to that police one real tight. Of all the lessons they're teaching you. But, you know, though back then there was so much validity to it. And I think sometimes that culture can lead to your attitude towards the police when you first encounter them. Even if you've never had a bad experience, you know, could lead yourself into a bad experience because of those preconceived notions or prejudices that you have.
Yeah, and so, and the same thing is just as we talk about these perceptions of police, that's how we know racism still exists, is because you got to realize that there are still some racist people, generationally speaking, that get these same lessons taught like AJ. And so they still have their own preconceived notion towards certain races that, you know, are, you know, bigotry or whatever it may be, you know what I mean? Because that's how they feel. That's how they were raised in a sense. So that's why we know racism still exists. So if we go to the situation in Georgia, AJ, man, look, what are your initial thoughts about that whole situation?
Man, I thought the video looked bad, man. They said we're talking about my initial reaction. 2 people attempted to make a citizen's arrest, which that alone is interesting to me, because I'm telling you right now, if I am jogging, walking down the street, driving or whatever, and somebody grab me talking about some citizen's arrest, it's gonna be some problems, man. Like I don't know you. I don't know what your intention is. Like, get up off of me, man. And I'm gonna do what I got to do to get you up off of me until the police show up. So that was my initial reaction with that. And then the video clip I saw was just like a really short clip of him running, and he's like kind of getting into it with a guy, and then it looks like the guy on the back of the truck pops off around. Then the guy with the long gun pops off around. It looked bad, man. It looked bad. How about you?
So for me, yeah, you're 100% right. It looked really bad. And the deceased's name is Ahmaud Arbery. And it looked real bad. Have you seen the video, Billy?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it looked really, really bad. And I'm going to say this. And so because there's been a lot of stuff coming out, there's going to be an investigation. And again, like I always talk about, any situation you have, I don't care how bad it looks, there always has to be an investigation into it, no matter what. And you know what I mean? Because you got to put yourself in the shoes on either end. You know what I mean? If you would, be owed that to have an investigation and go into whatever, right? So there's got to be an investigation to it. But it does look very, very bad on the grounds of them going out there trying to enforce the citizen's arrest. But what it led me to think about is like, where are we at in society where we are still going based off of some outdated laws? Because think about how long citizen's arrests have been in place, right? So, in California, if you commit a misdemeanor not in the presence of a police officer, then you have to formally say, hey, I want to place him under citizen's arrest. But that does not mean that you go out and enforce that arrest. You call the police and we will come and enforce that arrest. You know what I mean? So like, for example, if Billy were to go steal a piece of gum and, the store is like, the store was there, or if Billy stole that shirt that he's wearing and that tie for today, you know what I mean? If it's a misdemeanor that wasn't committed in the officer's presence, then when we show up to the store, when the police officers show up to the store, the police officers have to ask that store, hey, would you like Billy arrested? And the store has to say, yes, we would like him arrested. And then it's at that point in time where we will say, okay, now we're going to enforce the citizen's arrest. So anyways, the store would have to say, hey, we want Billy arrested. You know what I mean? So then the police would show up and enforce that. So if we go to this situation in Georgia, I guess according to Georgia law, they can go out there and enforce whatever type of citizen's arrest. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that's what this comes down to, is I don't think they should have went out there to enforce these laws. Just because even I think one of them is a former police officer, but who knows what that guy's level of training was? Who knows why he's no longer a police officer? We don't know, right? The other thing too is it says that they had information they believe that he might have been the suspect. So either way, I don't believe these guys should have chased him down and tried to enforce whatever laws that they believe were broken. Because again, at the end of the day, we're dealing with a property crime, right? So it sucks that, maybe somebody might have been breaking into your house. Maybe somebody would have been prowling around your neighborhood, but it's a property crime. It's a property crime. So why would you go out there and chase this guy and try to enforce his citizen's arrest as opposed to just calling the police and then having them show up? At least, they may be a little bit more trained. At least, they may say, hey, look, we can establish a perimeter, try to do a little bit more. But don't go out there and enforce it yourself. But I just found it interesting. And the last thing I'm going to harp on is that it's so sad that we still live in a society where everything gets brought back to the race. And that's the sad part. You know what I mean? Because unfortunately in our jobs, and you guys know more than I do, or as much as I do, that when we see black on black crime, we don't say nothing. When we see white on white crime, we don't say nothing. Hispanic on Hispanic crime, we don't see nothing. We're not seeing people going out there and picketing and saying this and that. You know what I mean? So all I'm saying is that it has to be equally important, because life is life. Life is life, no matter how we look at it. You know what I mean? If Billy was killed today, his life is just as important as my life and vice versa. And so we have to be as outraged when stuff like this happens, no matter who loses their life. But it goes back to the beginning of our conversation. At certain places in this country, racism is more prevalent than other places. And it's going to get brought back to that. But our generation, we just got into talking about our age before we got on this podcast. You and I are the same age. We're all the same age. And so with that being said, some of us have kids, some of us don't, some of us may have kids in the future. It's incumbent upon us to start changing that stigma. You know what I mean? So that way our kids don't grow up and start saying like, it's because of race, or it's because of this, or it's because it's the police. You know what I mean? It's up to us. We have to draw that line in the sand and say, hey, look, we got to change things for the better.
Speak on it, Nick.
Absolutely. Initially, when I saw that video, I was like, whoa. I watched it a few times, and I'm a guy who I really pick facts over feelings. I never let my feelings, justify what I'm going to say first. So I go and start doing some research, and I start looking at it. And then I start reading on Georgia law, because I know it's going to be different than Illinois law. And then I start seeing the citizens arrest thing. I start seeing open carry. I start reading to those two different things, and then I see that the state comes in Georgia and they make an arrest. And I'm thinking, personally, I'm like, they're doing this just to make sure there's no riots. They're doing this just to make sure there's, nothing burns down or whatever. But I honestly don't think, unless, federal were to step in and say some kind of civil rights violation or something of that nature, I don't think there's going to be a conviction. I really don't, just because of those old laws like you're talking about. I mean, I definitely would, if someone comes up to me with two long guns or, whatever, they're going to be a problem.
Yeah,
they're going to be a problem. Absolutely. All day there's going to be a problem. I mean, police officers aren't, for a property crime like that, where a person who was wearing what he was wearing doesn't have a weapon in hand, aren't going to come out with guns in hand pointing at you. So why is a person able to do that to you? On a property crime of something that's not even yours,
Yeah.
So I see a big problem with it. Maybe there'll be some different case law that comes out because of this. Maybe there'll be some law changes, but it always comes down to race, like you say. It turned into you can't even be a black man jogging anymore without being chased down and modern day lynched. That's what it's turned into, and then it's just creating more separation. It's the feelings are taking over instead of the facts. And when, certain people, they're on that borderline of, trying to understand, another side, say if you're a white individual and, you're trying to keep an open mind, but then you keep seeing these things where it's just feelings being said to you instead of things that go along with the facts, you eventually just start turning that off, your ears off. It's kind of like nowadays, a lot of people don't pay attention to car alarms because someone bumped into a car again or a kid's ball hit it. When they first came out, alarm went off. Hey man, someone's breaking into a car. Let's check this out. But it's now for those that are trying to make a change in this world when it comes to race and relations. If you consistently speak on just feelings and don't have facts that back it up, then those minds that you're trying to change, you just close their ears.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion on it, at least. That's my opinion on it, at least.
No, sorry. Man, let me get a drink of water real quick.
Oh man. So no, that's very well said, man. And going back to the original conversation I had with my buddy who brought up like the slave patrol, right? He brought that up and he's like, you have to realize that it was founded on hate in being the slave patrol. So you can only expect so much from the culture of policing. And my response to that was, well, you should support what we're doing even more so, because we're trying to change the culture and we're trying to change not only the reality of policing, but the perception of law enforcement as well. And that's for everybody, right? Like we get, and I'll speak for me once again, like I get what's at stake here, right? So me telling my son to not touch the top of the stove, he may get curious when he's a little bit older because he realizes if I touch the top of the stove, I might burn my hand. I'm going to try it. I don't really trust dad right now. Psst. He ain't going to do it again. I guarantee it, right? If he does, we got to have a different conversation. But the reality of it is, if I tell him, hey, don't touch the top of the stove, you might die, the chances of him reaching up and touching the top of that stove when he's older dramatically decrease. That curiosity is gone because now he knows he's playing with his life. And a lot of people look at law enforcement that way, right? And, you know, whether it's real or whether it's not, that's the reality that's passed down to a lot of people is, hey, you're playing with your life here. So I don't blame a lot of people for taking it serious, right? Or being super passionate about it. But with that said, you have to realize that police officers are not going anywhere. Police departments are not going anywhere. Police agencies, federal agencies are not going anywhere. They're in place now for a reason. I'll speak present day. They're in place now for a reason to make sure the land of the law is upheld and people are held accountable. With that said, when you have individuals like all three of us who are inside the police departments trying to change not only the culture but the reality of law enforcement, you have to support it. You absolutely have to support it. You can't cluster all of us in and go, well, just as another cop, or, you know, that cop is whatever and this cop is whatever. Like, you have to see us as that hope, that ray of sunshine. If that's what you truly believe, corruption in police departments are all-time high and police officers are racist. When you meet individuals, and I won't even say like us, when you meet an individual who wants to be the change within, you have to support it.
Yeah.
Because we're not going anywhere.
Yeah,
police officers are not going anywhere.
And you can't also just be like, you can't, you know, cry wolf either. Like, you can't, you say all this stuff and then you find somebody that actually doesn't, you know, fit the mold, and then you find something else that's wrong with that person. Because we see a lot of that as well, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But where are we at on time, Billy?
1 hour.
Oh, snaps. So really quickly, I want to talk about with you, Nick, you know, we've talked about before doing a lot of, or doing, you know, something outside of our day job, like mixed martial arts and things like that. So that way, and you mentioned something earlier, so that way the officer doesn't have to use the phrase, you know, I was in fear of my life. Tell me what you mean by that, and tell me why that's so important.
Well, we see like a lot of these videos where we have people that are having a problem with police, or saying, you know, police brutality, that officer may be well within their use of force policy in their department, so they won't become, you know, they won't get in trouble. But the public has a different perception. You know, it's what the Gracies call the acceptable force gap. You know, there's that gap between, hey, what we can do because of the use of force, you know, by our policy, and what the public thinks, you know, you should be able to do. There's that big gap there. And so when you're doing things that look like that, it just looks to the public like you're just, you know, it's another racist cop out there. He's just beating this guy because of this. When in reality, you're trying to do what you can to affect the arrest. You're trying possibly not use deadly force. It doesn't look good to the community. But if you know what you're doing, if you know how to use your hands, you have hands-on proficiency, then your use of force complaints go down. A lot of departments have this fear where they think that, oh, if my officers know how to fight, they're just going to fight more. A lot of departments or higher ups, they have that fear. You know, I fought professionally. In 9 years of being a police officer, I have never had a use of force complaint. Not once. And I've gone hands-on plenty of times. But because I knew what to do, I'm not throwing, you know, big punches, you know, into someone's face or beating them with the baton because, you know, I had hands-on proficiency. When it comes to deadly force, you do that because you're in fear for your life. A lot of times you're in fear for your life because you didn't know what to do. You're in a bad situation. Instances like, I remember one, I can't remember where it was, but there was a firefighter who was an off-duty firefighter who had just got married, and he got a little too intoxicated, and a police officer ended up having to deal with him. And the firefighter started giving them the business, and the police officer didn't know what to do. So this guy on his wedding night, you know, same city, he's working in the same city, that officer had to take his life.
Wow.
You know, he didn't know what to do.
Wow.
And I actually did a video on that, you know, what to do in that sort of situation, just to get people interested. But we always say this, you know, to each other. I hear this all the time from officers that say, you know, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get home. Are you? Because A lot of us aren't training. A lot of us aren't working out. You know,
Man, that's
are
deep.
we really doing that? Or is that just a mantra that we're just throwing out there because it sounds cool when everyone's saying it?
Wow. That's deep. You're
Good.
so right, because when you say, you know, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get home to my family, essentially what that should mean is that I'm going to work out when I'm not working. Yeah, the preparation. I'm going to try to do some type of other, training, whether it be, mixed martial arts, whatever it may be. So that way my training isn't just so fixated on using my firearm. Yes, do I want to be proficient at using my firearm? Yes, but we should be wanting to be proficient in everything. So that way we can make it home at the end of the night, and the person that we're dealing with can make it home at the end of the night. So I love that statement, the fact of saying like, hey, look, like, yeah, when we want to do everything I'm going to do, or I'm going to do anything I can to make it home to my family at the end of the night, that anything also needs to include working out, your lifetime fitness and things like that. So that way you don't have to become over-reliant on, your firearm. But would you say it's possible that people become over-reliant on their hands?
They can be. Absolutely. Right now, we don't have that problem. We have a big problem with tool reliance. We'll see how many times have you seen it either on the job or even in videos where an officer uses a taser, the taser fails, and then they don't know what to do. They use it, and then it didn't even connect, but they'll still pull that trigger like it's going to do something, eventually. Or this guy has a winter coat on, and I still tried this taser, and it didn't do anything, and they had no follow-up plan. And then this guy's attacking them, and then they're getting, beat, and then all of a sudden the weapon comes out and pow, because you had no plan.
Wow.
Hey Nick, I got a question then. So it sounds like you've done a wide variety of martial arts. What do you think?
Absolutely.
What is the most practical? Even keeping in mind like police wearing their gear, in an open setting. Like, what do you see as the best martial arts for them to learn?
I would say number one would be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Number one, because the reason I say that is because, there's an argument where people say, this martial art's better, this one's better. The reason I say that is because it's designed for the smaller person to beat the bigger person. It teaches you the anatomy and the physics of, the body and how to use that to your advantage. And so a smaller person, there's a lot of techniques that have come through over the years. You'll see them on Police One, Officer.com. A lot of techniques they'll show where they're doing it for an average size male. Well, how many smaller officers do we have? How many 5'1", 115-pound females do we have? They can't do the same thing. Me, I'm 6'2", 235. They can't do the same thing I can if it comes to if it's just. Sheesh.
God,
he look shorter, don't he?
He do, bro. Golly, you look like a freaking linebacker.
6'2", yeah. But if it's a strength-based thing, I can't teach that smaller person. As an instructor, I have a responsibility to teach something that you all can do, and then I show you how it works. And it's based on leverage. It's based on knowing the human body. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu doesn't do a lot on the ground. And if you're comfortable on the ground, then if the fight does go there, you are okay. You could let them wear themselves out. It teaches you when you're in a dangerous position or not. And if you're not in a dangerous position, you can hang out there until the guy wears himself out, until backup gets there, or until they're so worn out, their spirit's killed, and then you can do what you need to do. It's made for the smaller person to beat the bigger person.
So, Nick, with your expertise, if Billy and Ryan got into a fight right now in a studio, who will win? Your expert opinion.
Oh, Billy over here flexing on me right now.
Man, I ain't seen either one of them fight, man. But if the equipment's not working, then I think Billy's gonna have that anger, and it might take over.
Hey, nah, bro, I got these paws, bro. These are street paws. You can't. Hey, bro, you can't put a price on these street paws right here, bro.
I've heard Ryan say something and then seen him do the opposite.
Hey.
We linked up in Cali. He was like, "I'm an athlete."
I got these.
Shot an air ball. So
that's like my favorite video of all
time. These are street paws. All I see is the windmill.
Oh no!
A bunch of palm strikes.
Like the LAPD, like the LAPD officer that lost his mind on somebody, bro. Oh, bro,
Bruh.
Oh
Oh,
man.
hanging off on him like that.
that was terrible, bro.
Oh
It was
man.
that was hard to
That
watch,
was
bro.
Man,
terrible.
he threw his glasses. He was like, ugh.
Huh,
I mean,
huh.
like,
I'm really gonna get
I
him
really
now.
wonder what that guy said to him.
I'm really gonna get him now.
He,
He must talk about his
he
mama,
had to say
Man.
something. I'm like, man,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, man, that reminds me as a kid. Someone said something about my mama or something. That's the only way I could tee it off
bruh.
like that. But
his partner
wow.
should have bear hugged him. Like, hey, you calm down, man. Calm
Oh,
down.
Man. Well, so
Oh,
for the sake of time, man, I know we've run out of time, but man, Nick, we gotta have you back again. I keep saying that about a few of our guests, Miles, just because there's so much stuff I want to talk about, but it feels like an hour is not even short. But I don't want to keep you guys on here for 2 hours, even though I know you guys would probably listen. So, Nick, let me ask you, how long have you been following us?
man, I swear, since day one, I saw a video of yours and I was like, that's what's up. And of course, oh no, it's the Popo watching him. I'm like, oh, okay, this man got some moves. Okay, and
Nah,
I ain't gonna lie, I
that.
thought you was white too at first. I ain't gonna lie.
Everybody did. Everybody did. I still question myself. I
Oh
still question
man.
myself.
Oh man, but no, I feel it's like since day one when I saw it, I was like, man, I love this message. I love this message and conveying it in a way that in a better way than I feel I could. I'm just like, man, I love this. I'm gonna share the hell out of this stuff. I love it. It's great,
Oh man. Well, we appreciate you, Nick. We
and
really
there's passion behind it.
Passion. There's definitely some passion behind
Hey.
it. Listen, you should be on some of our conversations when we're driving to work or leaving work.
Oh,
Like, you talk
bruh.
about passion, man. Woo,
Bruh, I'm
that's
trying
what we
to
need
tell
to
you,
really be
bro.
recording.
Let me AJ, you got any Instagram meetings real quick or social media meetings? I think I have one right now.
Man, I'm
I
sure.
took
Let
some
me pull up
screenshots.
Instagram. Something pop right up.
Any fair fouls? Any of y'all got any fair fouls? I should have did the fair foul for when Nick called me out on the last made a video post on our Facebook feed, bro. What were we talking about? We were talking about something when I said something. I can't remember what I said, and Nick made a video out of it.
It was the martial arts thing. Was that one?
Oh yeah, where it shouldn't be required.
Oh yeah. That was pretty funny. I was like, okay.
Man, I had my headphones on. I was mowing my lawn, listening. I heard that. I go, oh, hold up. What point of the? Let me screenshot what part of the podcast this was. So I can go back and hear that again.
Bruh, I was crying when I saw that.
Let me see.
Bro, I just did
me
one
see.
earlier, actually.
I know. I took a screenshot. I can't find a screenshot. I have about 8,000 pictures of my kid in here, which is I'm that parent now.
Okay. I got one. Are you guys ready? All right. So for the social media meetings, this is shout out to Wonderland, spelled Onederland. He said, so much I want to say, but I'll leave it at your assessment was pretty tame of the situation. I get it though. Can't look like a traitor to the home team. Work might not be as enjoyable after you really say what you need to be said, what needs to be said. C for effort though.
A C?
See,
A C. My man gave me a C, bro. My man gave me a letter
still
grade.
a passing grade.
My man gave me a letter grade, bro.
Everybody wants to be down with the gang, man. Everybody wants to pick a side.
That's it. With that said, my man Nick, we talked about a lot today. We got into the deep discussion of race relations and police officers, which is always a super deep discussion. We talked about being comfortable with not only who you are, but as a police officer as well, with knowing who you are and what you're capable of and how to increase that those skills. So leave us with some closing words.
Man, what I really like to do is when people have situations they've gone through and they wonder how can they handle that better. I love working through that with them. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I like to work through that with them. Let's come up with a plan together. And then I like to make videos with that to kind of, work through that. And I'll send it to them and say, hey, does that work for the situation you're speaking on? If not, let's tweak it. I welcome that from everyone that listens to this, that goes through these situations or have seen others go through situations or saw a video and go, wow, I'm not sure what I would do in that, because we have to have that mind frame of what would I do in this situation, because mental reps are just as important as physical reps. Those are very important. You have to have that mindset of thinking, what would I do in this situation? I just want everyone, hey, remember that's more than just a mantra. You know, that's a lifestyle. If you want to make it home, do what you have to do to make it home. If you're not sure where to go, tell me where you're at, man. I have contacts all over the country. You know, I can find you a good place to go train. The majority of these places, they offer discounts to cops, you know. Closed right now, of course, because of the COVID stuff, but with many of the states reopening, things are opening back up. And it would be my pleasure to help you, because the best things, and my wife, she'll eventually get sick of hearing it, but, you know, I'll call her and be like, hey, guess what? So-and-so just called me or sent me a message saying that, hey, I just did that, you know, thing you showed me, man. It worked so well, you know, I didn't have to, you know, punch the guy in the face. Oh, man, I just wanted to thank you. You know, I get that from supervisors of mine, you know, sergeants, you know, people around the country sending me messages. I love it. And that's the best thing. And that's the goal, you know. I really want to change that, the face of use of force in training and law enforcement, because once we have that in our hands, our ability to use our hands are better, then a lot of these videos stop. A lot of these bad thoughts that people have from, you know, their upbringing or the media, they stop because they have nothing to back it up. They have nothing to water that seed, as you said earlier, AJ. They have nothing, you know. So I really want to, by the time I retire, something's going to be different around this country. I'm telling you, because I ain't stopping this, man. I'm not stopping this.
I like that. I like that. How do people get a hold of you?
LEO Combat Fitness on Instagram and Facebook. Send me a message. I try my best to answer all messages.
No, he don't answer me, y'all. He don't answer me.
You lie. You lie.
I had to search high and low to get my man.
Combat Fitness.
Oh man, so hey Nick, we appreciate you, bro. We really do. Like AJ said, Billy does. Like Billy said, man, we really appreciate you, brother. And keep doing what you're doing, bro. I'm gonna take you up, bro. I want to get into some type of Brazilian jiu-jitsu or some boxing, bro. Just so I can polish these good old street paws. You know what I mean? I gotta polish these.
And speaking of, you know, I'm just spitballing here, but I feel like we could raise a lot of money for a really good cause if we set up a charity fight between Ryan and Billy. I'm just throwing it out there.
That sounds like a terrible idea.
Hey, no, I'm coming for the other light skin wonder.
That's a bad idea.
I'm coming for the other light skin wonder, bro. Name of this episode is called Street Paws. Name of this episode is called Street Paws, man. So
I like that.
Hey, man, so we appreciate you guys. We love you. Thank you guys for always tuning in. If you guys really enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. It continues to help us improve, and it also keeps allows us to bring good guests like my boy Nick to the podcast to share his knowledge and wisdom with us. So thanks again, Nick. We appreciate you, bro. It is needed, man, and we'll see you. We'll have you back, man, for sure. So appreciate y'all, and we'll see y'all next week.
Peace.
Peace.